Exodus 33:14. The Lord replied, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." As I was reflecting on this scripture in the book of Exodus, I kept thinking about how interesting it was that this promise was given in the middle of the wilderness. The Lord doesn't tell Moses that the desert will suddenly become easy, and he doesn't remove the responsibility that Moses has or create a perfectly clear path forward. He simply says, "My presence will go with you and I will give you rest." And honestly, I've been thinking a lot about what rest means. Because for me, rest doesn't actually come naturally at all. Sometimes my mind just gets so filled with thoughts of like being behind or not doing enough or needing to keep pushing that even when I stop moving, I don't actually feel rested. But recently, I had a week where I pulled away from a lot of the noise. I wasn't listening to podcasts or scrolling or filling every quiet moment. And I noticed something really surprising. And maybe it's not surprising to you, but I actually felt a lot more present in my actual life, calmer and steadier. But not because all my responsibilities disappeared, but because my mind and heart felt quieter. And as I was sitting with the scripture, I was reminded of a drawing that my daughter recently made. I want to show you. She did these glowing lanterns and they're floating by the water and the sunset. And I couldn't get this idea of these lanterns out of my mind. And at first I thought maybe the lanterns could represent God's presence guiding us through the dark. But the more I reflected on it, the more I felt like it was something else too. Because when my life was starting to feel quieter, it wasn't that God just suddenly appeared because he was already there. But somehow I noticed him more. And I felt like the more present I became, the more little lights I could see. And maybe that's part of what the scripture means to me right now. Not that God removes us from the wilderness, but that his presence changes how we walk through it. Maybe rest isn't always the absence of responsibility. Maybe sometimes it's the quiet realization that we're never walking alone to begin with. So today we're going to paint these softly glowing lanterns rising into the evening sky. Little lights in the middle of dusk. A reminder that even in busy seasons and hard seasons and wilderness seasons, God's presence is still there. Sometimes we just need enough quietness to notice it. Hello, painting friends. Today we need a couple of extra steps for our painting. So first is you're going to want to tape off your paper just so that we can have some nice clean edges. We're also going to be doing a little bit of drawing. So you're going to want a pencil, and I'm doing some outlining with my waterproof pen. You can use a Micron. This is Faber-Castell. Make sure that it is waterproof. And I'm also going to be using a gel pen for the stars. If you want to use bleed proof white for the stars or omit the stars, that's fine too. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to go ahead and warm up on my scripture page here. I'm going to start by painting with water. This is how I like to warm up, but you can paint this however you want, or you don't even have to paint it if you don't want. Also, if you are new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome. There is a printable of the scripture that you can get by signing up at the link in the description. That will come to your email, and you also get the lessons earlier. So if you want to do that, you can find that below this video. So not required, but just kind of fun. All right, I am adding some pops of color and pulling down my water here. Now I'm going to talk through a little bit about what to expect for this painting. I know that there are some of my previous online students that watch these videos. So hello friends. If you are one of those previous students, then you may have some masking fluid. And if you do, then I would say mask out the lantern shapes. That's just going to be easier. I'm going to do it without masking fluid because I don't want anyone to feel like they need to go out and get additional supplies. So if you don't have it, please don't worry about getting it. If you do have it, this is a great time to use it. So that is my purpose for bringing that up. Okay. We also are going to be mixing some color. So make sure that you have a clean place on your palette to do that, or if you need to go grab another palette so that you can, then do that. Because our color, I really was, actually tested this painting out like 5 times because I wanted us to be able to paint around the lanterns without much problems, but be able to get it dark enough that it reads as night sky. So that means we have to mix in or mix our color from the get-go instead of doing a lot of layers for the sky. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and give this a quick dry, and then we're going to draw out our lanterns. Okay, I just grabbed a piece of scrap paper to show you the shape because I don't like to draw super dark on my watercolor paper just because it's harder to lift up the pencil lines. But this lantern shape is basically, we're going to do this. So the sides are tapered, okay, like this. And down on the bottom is an ellipse shape. Okay. And then depending on how tall you want them, you can make them taller or shorter. This part is just curved, the top bit. Okay. And that is the lantern shape that we are going to do. Okay, so just remember, taper in. These ones are actually a little bit less tapered now that I look at it. It depends on how you want to draw it. Some others that I saw were a little bit more like this kind of shape. Okay, so you could do it that way. You'd have yours more tapered. Now that I'm looking at mine, I would say mine is a bit more of a less tapery, I suppose. We've got that, drawing this really fast, and then rounded on the top. Something that helps me, because I really struggle with being able to draw things symmetrical, is I'll flip it upside down too and see if I need to like adjust any of my curves. That's a trick. Okay, so those are the shapes that we're going to do for the lanterns. And I decided to do 3 just because, again, we're painting around the shapes. So it can be pretty tricky to paint around shapes quickly because we're trying to, keep the page wet. You'll see when we get going. But when you lay out your lanterns, I've got 2 that are more towards us, right? More in the foreground, and then one that you can see in the distance that's floating. And something that's helpful is if you just change the angle of these, you can see, right? It helps to give the illusion that they're floating and not just like very stiff in your composition. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So don't make any of them really, really tiny. Like this is the smallest I would go, and I wouldn't add a ton. So that's why I thought 3 would work well. So go ahead and sketch yours out. I like to go lighter at first, and then I'll be able to outline with my marker once I feel like I have it all kind of how I want. And I'm trying to also keep in mind you know, the space that I have to paint. So personally, this is just me. I'm not having any come right out from the tape. You could though. You totally could. And I'm trying to space it so I can fit that third one up there. So these two will be about the same height. And if you need to turn your paper, then totally turn your paper. Now this last one I'll have at a similar angle as this, but maybe a little bit more straight. And just do your best. You know, once we add the sky and the stars and the lines, it's going to read as a lantern. Kind of wish I had dropped this down a little bit more, just so I have a little more space between these two. I'm being nitpicky right now on my own art, but like, you are probably done. Okay. So don't feel like you need to follow yours. Yours doesn't have to look like mine, is what I'm saying. Okay. Just dropping it down a little bit more, just so it's easier for me to paint around these shapes. Okay. And that's feeling pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to outline with my, my marker, my pen. And if you notice here, it doesn't have to be perfectly solid lines. This is a little bit more of a sketchy-ish look. So don't feel like you need to make a really strong, perfectly solid line. Some broken lines are fine. Kind of adds to the vibe of this painting. And just do your best. Like, that's not straight, so but it's gonna be okay. Turn this a little bit. I think my marker might be a little bit dying because it's not really working. That's okay. Now, one quick tip is, you know, we are going to erase the pencil lines on here. And before you erase those pencil lines, give your paper a quick dry, because it can be very easy to smudge these pen lines, and then there's no way to really get it off. So I'm just doing these lines first. Go ahead and give it a dry, and then I'm going to erase my pencil lines. All right, I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to rub the pencil lines off instead of scrubbing back and forth, because again, I just don't want to get that black ink everywhere. So this is just the more conservative way to get those pencil lines off. Okay, I'm going to move this out of the way so I can show you the color mixing that we're going to do. I'm going to be using this mixing well here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a puddle of water. And I am grabbing cobalt blue. And I actually want to make quite a full puddle, because I'm going to be adding some paint to this puddle, but basically the color transition will begin with this color. So I need enough to cover almost all of this paper. If you're not quite sure how much that is, my well here, hopefully this gives you like a good idea. It's getting pretty full. And remember, when we have more pigment, we're able to have stronger, more vibrancy, right? Because the more water we add, the more transparent it becomes. And I'm going to grab some of this Payne's Gray, and I am going to mix that up into here till I get it's like a night sky blue. If you have a scrap watercolor, you can use that. Try and see if I've got one. All right, so maybe something like that, okay, to give you an idea. Now, if you run out of paint while you're painting, it's okay. You can just mix up some more, but it's just going to be easier for this project specifically that you have enough mix from the get-go. And looking at this, I've got some lights here so that you can see this better, and it's harder for me to see. I'm feeling old now. That's okay. I'm just going to mix just a tiny bit more. Just swatched it to see if I got a similar color. Yes, I did. Okay. So let me just walk you through this, because then we're going to like just go for it. We are going to be painting wet on wet. So we're going to be adding water to our paper. So that means this paint is going to become more transparent looking, which is why I really wanted this to have some good pigment in it to begin with. Okay. We're going to be painting wet on wet and paint around these shapes. Okay. And then we are going to add more blue to this to get something that's about this tone. And then we're going to add purple to this to get something that's a little bit purpley. And then eventually we're going to add some pink. And what happens by doing this, we're keeping this as basically our base color, because any color we're adding to our sky has some of this in it. And that helps it feel cohesive and a little bit more on the darker side instead of everything being super light. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. And it'll probably make more sense as you watch me do it. So you may want to watch what I do first and then do it. Trying to make space here. Just gonna do that. All right. So make sure you've got a big-ish brush. This is what size is this? This is a 1/2 inch. Okay, and I'm painting with water first. And the reason is when we paint wet on wet, so painting with water then adding our color, I feel like the colors are just better able to mingle and blend. And that's just gonna look a little bit nicer. Okay, so you can see I added water to about 1/4 of the page, and I'm just painting around as best I can. Now I'm going to grab this blue and I'm dropping in that paint. I need to probably hold my notebook down a little bit because it's getting a little bit full. So it's trying to tilt a little bit to the left. Okay. And I'm going to move pretty quick. You can see that since we're doing wet on wet, we get these fuzzy edges. So I'm just going to get closer to the edges here of my lantern and just do the best you can. Okay, fill this up. And my goal right now is to basically keep things wet for a minute. Okay. I'm going to grab some of this Payne's Gray. I'm going to add it to this top bit. The reason why I didn't mix it into our original paint, like making it really, really dark, is because it would be hard to get it to the color transition that I want to, because it's just such a strong color. Like you can see, it's really strong. And this way I'm kind of like just blending this dark color into the blue here. I'm using my paper towel as well. And just letting it kind of flow. Maybe add just a little bit more, just for a bit of contrast. I'm going to dip back into this blue, kind of let things mingle. Okay, now this is where it's going to get interesting. Okay, got this puddle here. I'm going to add water, and that paint is just going to follow that water, right? Add some on this side too. Obviously there's pigment now because it's pulling the paint that was above there along with the water I just added. Okay, I'm going to grab the cobalt blue and I'm adding it to my mixture. So what I'm going to get now is a blue that has some of that Payne's gray, but now is feeling a little bit more blue, right? A little more blue, a little less gray. And you can pull this down, like this color down as far as you want, but I really do love that purple in the sky in the example. So about this point, I'm going to transition into this purpley color. So I'm cleaning my brush as best I can. Now I'm going to add water, and so again we're going to be pulling some of that blue paint that's right above it. It's going to flow into this next color transition, right? Just painting around those lanterns. Now I'm going to grab my purple. I'm really trying to get a lot of this pigment on here. And I'm going to mix it in with this blue here. Then I'll drop in this color. I'm going a little bit above where that blue is that I laid down, because I'm trying to create that color transition. And you can see that, you know, I'm gonna need to fight that blue a little bit because there's blue from the paint on the paper already. So if you want more purple, you're just gonna have to add a bit more to your palette and then add more to the paper. This. Okay, cleaning my brush. And again, you can decide how much of each color you're gonna have. Okay, so I'm adding my water here. And let's say you want more purple. Add more purple. Okay. It's up to you. Now, what I wanted to do is down at this bottom area, I really wanted that pink to pop. I'm trying to hold this down. Actually, before I do that, I am going to just try and blend some of this. I don't want to do too much because then I'll get some really hard lines, but just a little bit. Okay, moving on. I'm going to put water down on the bottom, okay, because I want this color to feel a little bit more pink on the very bottom. So I'm going to throw in this pink, which is quite vibrant on the bottom here. And then we're going to come up and let these touch. And they're going to bleed into each other. Now I do feel like this is looking lighter than I want it to actually. So I'm going to grab this pink. I'm going to add it to what I had on my palette to try to get a little bit more of that Payne's gray, because remember that Payne's gray is in there. Just to get something that feels a little bit darker. And again, you get to decide where those color transitions happen. What I'm trying to do is like not make it look like completely straight lines. So that's why I'm kind of coming up above where I kind of made a straight line to add a little bit of this pink. Okay. All right, sweet. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a quick dry, and then we will move on. Let's move on to the lanterns. Now, when you finish drying this, if it looks too light to you, you can do a second layer. Just make sure you do it in the same way, wet on wet. You are going to reactivate some of the paint underneath. So just make sure that you're just kind of keeping that in mind. Cleaning my brush as best I can. Let's look at this as an example. Okay, I'm gonna switch out my water because I want to keep the center of these lanterns looking pretty light. We're gonna paint these all wet on wet, and I'm actually gonna start with one of these larger ones just so you can see, but we're gonna paint them all in the same way. So I am going to paint with water. I know I can't see exactly where the edges are, but it should be shiny, not like a big puddle. And then while it's wet, I'm grabbing some yellow. I'm gonna go on the sides, on the top, down on the bottom. And I'm trying to keep that center really light. So I'm not putting color right in the middle there. If some color flows into there, since we started with water, it's going to be pretty light. And then I'm going to add some orange. Okay, just on the top and on the sides. And just going to let it do its thing. Okay, going to let it bleed. So that's how we're going to do this first step on all of them. Okay, paint with water. Add yellow to the sides. Try and keep that center pretty bright. Adding orange to the top and the sides. And then we'll just move on to the next. Let's paint water over here. Water. Yellow. And if you don't paint right up to the edge of your line, it's fine. It works with this style of art. Orange. Okay. And then dry. Okay, we literally just have a few more details and we're done. I'm going to do a few lines on our lanterns here. So I'm going to do these lines that come from the top and then come down. So if you want to think of it more as like a pumpkin, right, where it's not a straight line down, but it kind of comes up in curves a little bit. My pen does not want to work. Come on, pen. There it goes. And if it's a broken line, that is totally fine. And then underneath this rim, I'm going to do a little semicircle. I kind of lost this line, so I'm going to just add it in. Okay, so you're going to do that to all of them. Okay, just like before, I'm going to give this a quick dry just to make sure. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a little bit more depth. What I am going to do is I am going to add some yellow ochre. So it's this color right there, right underneath here. And I'm avoiding that little semicircle that we just drew in. This brush is terrible. This is not a very good brush. So I'm avoiding that. Coming down almost to the edge. This one I just filled in because it's so tiny, and then I can kind of blend that out. Okay, this brush is no good. Moving to a different brush. And if I have any puddles, I'm picking those up. Okay, putting that paint down. And then I'll just blend it out. If you want, you can just fill it in like a coloring book. That is absolutely fine too. Okay, I'm going to take some of this orange. I'm going to show on this one, well, maybe this one, so I don't get my hand in wet paint. I'm going to add a bit more orange. Okay, so it's not too watery. That first bit I put down was kind of watery. Up and over this edge. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to create just a stronger bit of orange on this top part, okay? Still trying to avoid the center to keep that nice and glowy. I'll show you again on here. So I'm basically like following this outline. So the side, here, this side, here, and down on the top, and then I'm going to kind of bring this down in a almost like a curved shape, and I can kind of blend it out. This one's not super blendy, so I'm going to blend out this edge. Again, I'm trying to avoid having that center become really dark, okay, because that's where the light is coming from. So I'll do the same over here. Edge, edge, center curve. Okay. And then I'm going to grab a smaller brush that's not horrible. And I'm going to grab that yellow ochre. And I am going to add a little shadow right along this edge where these lines are that we put down. Okay, just like that. Okay, and then I just need to deepen a few more things here. So right underneath here, we got to make it a bit darker. So I'm grabbing a bit of brown, and I'm just going to add in some more right underneath here and just kind of blend it out. Okay, so I put the paint down and then I do the brush wiggle, okay, to blend it out. I can add just a few touches of this brown on the edge, a little bit on the top there. Cleaned my brush. It has a very little bit of water, and then blend that out. Okay, just a hint. Okay, you can also do it on the other side if you want. You could also do this part with a colored pencil if you want to just add a little bit. It's just adding these little details that kind of help it feel a little bit more three-dimensional. And they're just really, really soft lines. Okay. Now from here, you can add your gel pen to make some dots for stars. Okay, and if your painting is really light, they're not going to be as noticeable. But over in these darker areas, you'll see. I'm going to do like a twinkling star. Definitely pops more there because of the contrast we have between the white and then the dark. So I'm just adding some dots. I'm trying not to make it look so like perfect, but our minds are really good at trying to make patterns, and I'm trying to say stop it. So just do your best, add as many as you want, twinkle stars, whatever. But yeah, there you go. There's your project. I hope you enjoyed this one. As we finish this painting, I keep coming back to the image of these lanterns rising into the sky. There's something really peaceful about that to me. They don't rush. They don't force their way upward. They simply rise, carried by the light within them. And I wonder if God's presence in our lives can feel a little bit like that sometimes. Not always loud or dramatic, but gentle, steady, quietly lifting us. I think a lot of us spend so much time mentally racing ahead, worrying, striving, trying to hold everything together on our own, that we stop noticing how often God is already with us. The little ways He guides us, comforts us, reminds us that we are not alone. And maybe that's part of the rest He was offering Moses in the wilderness. Not the absence of responsibility, but the reassurance of His presence, a steadiness in the middle of uncertainty. So if your life feels busy or noisy right now, maybe this can just be a small reminder to pause long enough to notice the lights, the evidence that God is still near, still guiding, and still walking with you. Thank you so much for joining me, friends. I'll see you next time.